Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is Lionel Ketchian, and I'm here with George Ortega. And we're here to talk about happiness because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Today we're going to be talking about happiness and liking. And to start off our show, we have a fashion designer, our guest, George Brass. Welcome again, George.
Thank you.
You were here last week.
Thank you, Lionel. Thank you, George.
Yeah. And what are we going to talk about today?
I think we'd love to talk about styles.
Okay.
Styles, I think it's one of these things that it's really related to us. It brings out in us, you know, the best we can. It brings us a happier person. It's related to our happiness because there is actually, I think, two styles. I think there is like the style that you go to work, and there is the leisure style, the fun style, the style you really want to be fun, you want to be playful, you want to be cheerful. And definitely I think if we pick up, like open your closet and look at your styles, you know, whatever your state of mind tells you, it's about who you are. Just play with your styles. Like maybe you want to be sporty before you go to work, or you go to a coffee shop, or you go to a theater, and then when you get off work you want to go see your friends, you want to be leisure and playful, so you want to maybe see your closets more fun, more stylized, and it doesn't matter if it takes you to see a magazine, for instance, you know, a fashion magazine or a vintage magazine. You know, take a look in clothes in stores, in vintage stores. I think it takes us just a matter of turn on our fun minds. Like, you know, I want to be happy, you know, and not necessarily doesn't mean that because you're going to work you have to be boring about your style. It doesn't. Look at your tie, how beautiful. You know, lovely, lovely. It's like smiling. Look at George, and you know, it's just about state of mind and being happy.
George, yeah, you're talking about how there's the two different kinds of styles, work and leisure. So what kind of advice would you have to be able to have, let's say, our work styles be as positive and uplifting as possible?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's first, I think it's about us getting into the mood, like being passionate about what you do. I think before the style comes, it's a passion about your work, a passion that you take in to work with you. And besides that, you have to really turn that on in your mind, and then it's going to be fun if you're, you know, I understand a lot of attires for professionals, you know, you have to be more conservative style, and even in a conservative style you can pick up like a nice graphic shirt, or you can have a graphic motif tie on a suit. And if a woman, you know, you want to have your suit more like vibrant, you want to contrast with a bold color, or some graphics, or your shoes, accessorize. And or maybe like being a man in a conservative office, you know, you want to play with your shoes, you know, have like a more fun shoes, or maybe have a fun tie. You know, it's tremendously, and generally there is a lot of things you can change your style. If you look at magazines, at fashion magazines, it's a great help. But before that, turn on your state of mind, turn on yourself, like being passionate, being happy about who you are, about yourself.
George, as you're saying that, it's interesting because well, I'm wearing this tie today, but generally when I've gotten dressed up in a suit and even gone to New York in a suit,
Right.
whenever I could, I always wore, as you said, a graphic tie, something colorful generally, very expressive. And, you know, in the beginning it might have been hard, but it did express who I was and the state of mind I felt. And most of the time when I wore these ties, they were maybe a little bold, but it made me feel good, and generally got compliments from guys, from women, from anybody. You know, I'll be in an elevator with some guy, and he'll say, "Nice tie," and I'll say, "Thank you." In a sense, for a conservative guy, let's say, getting dressed in a suit and dark clothes or whatever kind of suit, the tie is almost the only thing you know, I can have that last little flair with, you know, which makes me feel, hey, there's a human being in here.
But is it a style, isn't it? It's still a style. I mean, it's like even the conservative guy, the conservative woman, the professional attire. There is a charm. There is an appeal about it.
Yes.
You know, it's charming seeing a professional figure, you know, in a very conservative but fun attirement, you know. So it's about who you are. You are passionate about doing that, like you said with your colleagues.
Yeah, and also, as you said before, it very definitely comes back to me. In other words, you know, it's almost like you reflect it and then it comes back. You know, sometimes, especially when I wear this tie, I'm walking down the street and somebody is smiling at me, and I'm not smiling, and I forget I have the tie, and they're really smiling because in a sense they're smiling at the tie, but really they're smiling at me because I'm wearing who I am.
Who you are. You are a happy person.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
This is
so
what,
you're right.
You know, I think that's tremendously right. You know, it's about spirituality. It's about who you are. It's about you are driven for, what you're doing, and definitely I think it's it. Like my style for today. I bought this shawl that I love, you know, and it's like, it's me. You know, I like this, you know, this is tropical, this is me, and I love it. It's fun,
nice.
It's playful.
It's vibrant.
And I'm all working.
Wonderful, and it keeps you warm.
It does.
Well, we've just about run out of time. George, I want to thank you so much for being our guest today. Thank you for being
You're
here.
welcome.
We're going to take a brief pause, right?
Yeah, we're going to take a brief pause. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Thanks for standing by, and that was a quick time out, wasn't it? And we're back. George, we're talking about happiness and liking. What is there about liking life? You know, why is that so important? I mean, do we have to tell people to like your life? And do people like their life?
Yeah, and it's not just about liking life. I mean, I get in a certain sense it is, because life is everything. And that's the idea. Happiness and liking. The idea is that, like, pleasure is about liking. You know, if we like other people, they bring us pleasure. If we like music, it brings us pleasure. Whatever it is that we like brings us pleasure, and whatever it is that we dislike or like less will not bring us as much pleasure.
Well, there's a clue there. So if we dislike something, we naturally elevate our displeasure. Ah, there's a clue. There's a clue to something.
Oh yeah. And like, you know, sometimes we think that, like, what we like and what we don't like is just like beyond our control. Like, you know, it's like natural and we like this, we don't like. But, you know, we have more control over this than we realize. For example, many of our parents understand this intuitively. So like when they say to their kids, you know, eat your vegetables, eat your spinach, right? I mean, there's such things as acquired tastes. I think alcohol in general, like beer, most, you know, spices, you know, condiments. So if you apply that principle to life in general, you end up concluding that if I don't like something so much, if I make the effort, if I decide that I'm going to like it more, then by doing that, I'm going to feel happier. That's going to, you know, make things so much easier.
Yeah, well, you use the word decide, and I know happiness is a decision. If you don't decide to be happy, your odds are that you're not even going to be aware that happiness is in your control. And this is part of a greater idea that pleasure and liking things is something we actually have control over. Now, let me ask you something. What happens in a case when you just don't like something?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, there's a lot in the world that we would prefer would be different. The world is just like far from perfect in a lot of ways. So what happens is we've got two choices actually. We can like say to ourselves, well, let's say it relates to certain people in our lives, okay? We can say to ourselves, making the effort, we can like these people, this person, much more. Okay, so we can, again, as we were talking about before, just knowing the person more, knowing the whatever it is more, and that will generate the like. The other part is that, you know, there are parts of life, politics, global things beyond our control that we don't like, and if we think about them, you know, it's going to limit our happiness. So obviously the answer is that if there's nothing we can do about it, and if it's there, you know, it's only making us less happy if we draw our attention to it, if we're focusing on it. So if something in the world doesn't make us happy, and we can't do anything about it, there's no sense to think about it, you know. I mean, we have to like, yeah, just basically decide to not focus on what we naturally don't like as much.
Very true, and I'm looking at what you're saying, and what I'm coming up with is something that I guess is something I've incorporated in my life. You know, we seem to, or some people, create demands, and demands could be a very funny thing, because when we don't get what we demand, we could become very unhappy. And the trouble is when we demand things that aren't about the change. That's a real instant, and not only instant, but permanent state of unhappiness. So that, you know, until something changes, you're not going to be happy, which is probably a great definition of insanity as far as I'm concerned. But there's another way to deal with demands. And I wasn't the brilliant one that came up with this. I've done a lot of reading, George, and one author, he's not alive anymore. He died in, I think it was around 1995 or in the late 90s. His name was Ken Keyes. It was spelled K-E-Y-E-S, but it was pronounced Keyes. He wrote many books on spirituality. He wrote The 100th Monkey. He wrote books on happiness. And you know, he's the first author who really showed me that if we could change our demands into preferences, we have a chance. And what a preference is, I mean, it doesn't sound like much, and you used the word, you know, just about 5 minutes ago, and the word preference is about not demanding something be the way it is. It is asking for what you want and actually being happy with it either way it turns out. But you know, a lot of people get fooled. They think preference means they want something a certain way, but they won't even ask for it to be that way because they're afraid it won't change. A preference means you ask for it to change, but if it doesn't change, it's equally okay because you've done everything you can to change it. But the smart thing with a preference is that you do everything you can to change it, but you don't let it change you.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the trouble with demands. Demands would change. You know what? If this statement were true, demands change nothing, the trouble is, it's worse than that. Demands do change everything. They change you into a miserable, unhappy person. And that's one of the problems in the world we live in. And that's why liking things has an intelligence value. And that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, and you know, about liking, I guess the point that comes up is that if liking things is just so naturally a pleasure inducer, then when you think about it, well, what's most important to like? I think probably happiness, right? Just that feeling. If we really like that feeling of happiness, that feeling of pleasure, we're going to seek it, and we're going to, like, you know, understand it, cultivate it, develop it. But then, aside from that, then what in life is it most important to like? And that, exactly, yes, us, because like the idea is like, you know, we're in certain places a certain amount of time, we're with certain people a certain amount of time, doing things a certain amount of time, but whatever we're doing, wherever we are, with whomever we're with, we're always with ourselves. So like if there's anything in this world, the most important thing to like in this world is ourselves. And the more we like ourselves, the happier we'll be, because, again, this feeling of liking just naturally, very intuitively just generates these positive feelings.
And George, as far as I'm concerned, actually being happy or putting happiness as a significant importance and liking yourself are the same thing. I mean, they come down to the same thing. Because if you're happy, you're going to tend to like yourself, and if you like yourself, you're going to be happy. So the two of them reinforce one another. I mean, you can't like yourself and be unhappy. It just doesn't go together. It just doesn't fit. You know, it's one is part of the other.
Right. I suppose you could you could not like yourself and be very happy, I suppose, because, like, if you don't like yourself for whatever reason, I mean, don't think about yourself too much. I mean, just
I don't know. You know, who knows? Well, we won't philosophically debate it, but you know, I still think happiness is one of the great elevators of self-esteem.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, so.
Oh yeah, no. It says we can be sure. Happiness, liking happiness will help us to like ourselves.
Right. Sure. Well, even if maybe it's not so apparent that we're going towards liking ourselves, but I think once you begin to practice happiness, I think you have to include yourself in the formula, because otherwise there's something missing. You know, it's really like when Jesus said, "Love thy neighbor as thyself." He was also including us in our feelings towards others. So, you know, he could have very easily said, "Just love everybody," and dropped it at that, but he included us. So. That's significant. And the reason I bring that up is, if that statement was made 2,000 years ago, it's just as misunderstood today, 2,000 years later. I don't think it was understood very much then, but I don't think we've gotten that much clearer on it right now. Because we're not loving ourselves enough in order to be happy.
Right. And part of it is that, unfortunately, also in our historical tradition, our religious tradition, our philosophical tradition, there's that quality of that we're not supposed to like ourselves too much, because like it's egotistical, it's you know, it's selfish in a way. But that's not at all, of course, what we're talking about.
Right.
You know, we're not talking about liking ourselves at the expense of other people, or liking ourselves, you know, in a way that impinges upon other people's happiness. It's about liking ourselves because, if for no other reason, because we are with ourselves all the time.
Well, you know, again, bringing up this, you know, famous, maybe most famous concept of Jesus Christ, and when he said, you know, love thy neighbor as thyself. I mean, I'm sure you know 2,000 years ago, somebody stood up and said, "What do you mean you love yourself?" You know, it's really, we're still questioning the same thing today. But you've really walked us into another area, and that's happiness and goodness.
Yeah. Okay.
And I mean, and you and I certainly see the connection. I think there's a very strong connection here between happiness and goodness. Maybe we can elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. You know, as we've talked about before, Aristotle considered happiness the highest good. And, you know, I think we have to agree with him completely, because happiness is not just the highest good. Happiness is the purpose, the goal of every other kind of goodness there is. I mean, we're truthful, we're honest, we're diligent, we're responsible, we're compassionate. Every kind of goodness we can think of is good because it helps other people and ourselves to be happier, feel happier. So, and again, so that, like, if we like goodness, if we appreciate goodness and appreciate happiness as the highest good, that helps us to understand the value of goodness in our lives. That helps us to understand that it's important to be good, not just because it's important to be good, but because it's important to our most basic and strongest goal in life, to feel happy.
Exactly. And I didn't make up this statement, but I repeat it all the time, and I really forgot who said it initially. But good people are not always happy, but happy people are always good. And I think there's a lot of truth to that saying, and a lot of times people try to be good, try to do the right thing and be good people, be a good person. And sometimes they just can't take it anymore because they're just not finding, they're missing out on happiness by just concentrating on goodness. So goodness without happiness is not enough. But happiness can incorporate goodness. It can lead you to goodness. For one reason, that a happy person has less desires, less basic needs and wants than the average person, because they've come to realize certain things, that they're getting fulfilled in other ways. They're getting fulfilled, maybe they're nurturing themselves in certain ways that an unhappy person is looking for others to fulfill. And when they're doing this, they're actually satisfying themselves, their most basic instincts. And then what happens to a happy person is they feel fulfilled, and they feel the spillover effect, where a happy person is going to naturally want to connect with someone else. They're going to want, they're friendlier. And that friendliness is really a part of goodness that we're talking about, because the reason I want to be with you is just to share my happiness, because I don't need you to be happy, but I need you, I suppose, to give you happiness, and then I get some even more. You know, I go away with, the more I give you, the more I end up with. And so I think that the aspect of goodness that we're speaking about is one where we want to do for others as we're feeling that we have. So happiness is goodness, and it's really altruism. It's really caring about the other person. It's really about selflessness through really being connected to yourself in a way that most people don't experience.
Yeah, I think the philosophy that probably best describes the connection between goodness and happiness is the utilitarian philosophy that defines goodness as what brings the most happiness to the most people. So again, as you were saying, it's not just about our happiness, it's about the happiness of us all. I wanna talk about, like,
Sure.
The importance, you know, because this is about liking things, and it's like so important to like working on happiness, not just to like the experience, but to like the process of becoming happier. And the reason it's important is, like, for example, we can like watching TV, or we can like reading or playing an instrument, and some of these things will bring us some pleasure, some of these things will bring us more pleasure. But you know, these things are, these activities are investments in time, and we only have a limited amount of time. And so the idea is that, like, you know, the thought, the idea of liking working on happiness, of even working on happiness, is very novel. It's not taught in schools, it's not taught in society by our parents. But you know, if we cultivate this like, if we just, like, for example, a person can be learning an instrument, the piano, and initially it may not be all that pleasant, but the more the person practices, the more the person understands the music, gets better at it, the more and more pleasurable that activity becomes. So that I think probably in terms of liking an activity, probably we're wisest to really cultivate that liking of working on happiness. Because if we really decide to really take this initiative of working on our happiness, and then, you know, enjoy it, then everything is set. Then that way, you know, we're working on what's going to ensure and create the greatest happiness for the rest of our life.
Well, are you saying that that liking to become happier is really practicing to become happier?
Exactly. Yeah, the idea that, like, you know, we want to be happier, we want to be as happy as possible, but that requires understanding happiness. It requires doing certain things, thinking certain thoughts. It has a kind of like it could be a program. Like if you study an instrument, there are scales, there are songs you practice.
Yeah, you know, as you're talking about this, I think of a couple of analogies. You know, real estate. What are the three most important things? Have you heard? Well, it's almost like a joke, but it's location, location, location. That's the three important things. Maybe with happiness, it's practice, practice, practice.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's all it is.
You know, I'm a happy person. You're a happy person. I'm reminded of a story, and it's actually about music. I forgot who played the piano in Carnegie Hall, but there's a number of very famous people that have been able, you know, I don't know the names of the pianists that well, but at the end of one recital, this woman goes up to a famous piano player and says, you know, I would give my life to play like you did. And he says, I did.
Yeah, yeah.
So people, you know, people like look at you, look at me and say, you're lucky, you're happy. But you know what? Luck had nothing to do with it. We're giving our lives for our life, you know, for being, for understanding happiness. Because first you understand the value, and then you practice it because you understand how beneficial it is.
Definitely.
And then all of a sudden you reap the benefits. And then other people look at you like say, hey, I want what you got, but guess how they get to get it.
Right, and you know, I think we've just got a couple of minutes, and I want to return to this idea that what's going to fuel our efforts to work on liking happiness is liking pleasure, because pleasure is what happiness is about. So, so basically, the idea is that, like, you know, like for example, some of us are just not in touch with our anger, and there are like these anger management programs that get people in touch. Hey, you're angry, you don't realize it, you know, you know, whatever. With happiness, I think some of us just aren't maybe so aware of the feeling, aren't aware of the pleasure. So, like, again, with anything else, for those of us who aren't that familiar with the feeling of pleasure and the feeling of happiness, it's a matter of cultivating that liking. It's a matter of, like, feeling it, like sitting down in a chair and just focusing on the pleasure and saying, hey, this feels great, you know? And it's just that easy. So again, if we like our happiness, you know, if we work to like our happiness, that's going to fuel our efforts to become happier and happier.
Yeah, because we'll see the benefit of it. Yeah, very good. Well, George, it's just about it. So I got to let everyone know that we've enjoyed having you. We hope you have too, and thanks very much for watching. In the future, we're going to explore other topics that are designed to help us better enjoy life, be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope we'll see you again next week here on The Happiness Show. Thanks very much, and George, it was great. The time goes so quickly, and I look forward to another wonderful show with you next week. Thanks. Thanks, folks, and practice happiness. It's important. Being happy is the most important thing you could do for yourself. Take care.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.